Alright, so I guess we'll just get started right now. So I hope all of your week 6 has been good so far. So we're just gonna start off right away with announcements. So A-board applications come out tomorrow after general meeting. Are either of you interested in running? I know you are.
I'm still deciding. I don't know.
Do you want to do GraphTech or some other role?
I was thinking something else, but GraphTech is still nice. I'm still undecided. I just wanted to see what they look like first.
Okay, yeah. So like the entire application comes out tomorrow, and then you'll see like all the prompts for each position. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna get started right away with the cybersecurity workshop. Do you guys have access to the Prezi?
My computer is in front of me.
So. Okay. If you have access to the Google Doc, you could just pull it up directly from there. Or I could just point it this way as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's easier. Alright, yeah, so the workshop is basically on cybersecurity and keeping all your information safe. So in recent news, there's been a lot of cyber attacks on certain things, such as the recent one back in, I believe, September on the DIN cyber attack, which attacked Twitter, and also the recent news about the election hacking by Russia. So this shows like how important it is to be aware of what's going on exactly in terms of securing your personal information on your electronic devices. So there are numerous types of security problems that exist. The three most common ones are distributed denial of service, also known as DDoS. This is basically when you send a bunch of information to a server and try to overload it. So then once that happens, they're unable to allocate the resources for anything else. You have like common identity theft and phishing attacks. So that's basically like when someone tries to take your personal information. And then you also have other forms of viruses, worms, botnets, and Trojan horses that we'll talk a little bit more in detail later on. So what are DDoS attacks? This basically uses a large number of compromised machines to attack a single target, and it's a very common problem today. Most notably, China had a lot of DDoS attacks. Like recently, I think back in 2008 or 2009 when Google tried to make way into China, and then that's part of the reason they left because they didn't really want to work with like this kind of issue. And also the 2016 DIN cyber attack on Twitter. So that was very recent. It took down a lot of traffic on the internet, not only Twitter, but also things like, I believe, GitHub and like a few other websites. So what's the best way to protect yourself from a DDoS attack? It's pretty difficult, but a good idea is to try to identify and block rogue packets within your firewall or router. So there should be some settings that you could enable to see if you get some sort of unidentified packets, then you probably want to filter them out or just block them from coming in because that could be a source of a potential DDoS attack. Some other attacks are also e-commerce attacks. So this sort of goes along the lines of identity theft and phishing. So the common ones are credit card number theft, identity theft, and manipulation of e-commerce sites like Amazon, for example. One of the more notable attacks was back in 2010 on Sony, which cost them $170 million in cash. So there's a lot of ways to protect yourself here. So common ones are using two-factor authentication because this will require them to, if it's from a previously unidentified device, they'll require you to authenticate yourself through like your phone or something, through text messages. So it's just an extra layer of security. Strong passwords, so it's pretty shocking, but a lot of people use really simple passwords. So this is part of the reason why people can crack into the system because they're really simple passwords. Like literally, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. So try to use strong passwords that use a wide variety of characters as well as like capitalization and punctuation. And then also try not to store sensitive data on some of your accounts, like listing out personal information such as addresses, like credit card numbers, could be potentially dangerous because of these e-commerce sites are big targets for cyber criminals. So that's just like another thing to keep in mind. So a more particular instance of cybersecurity is like in terms of cyber warfare. So there's a case study called the Stuxnet worm. One of our professors, Kerry Natchenberg, went over this really in depth because he worked at Symantec. So basically, the context behind the Stuxnet worm was that it was, I believe, created by a combination of like the Israeli and U.S. Governments to try to destroy the Iranian nuclear centrifuges for their nuclear program. And it had a very sophisticated method of hiding itself to avoid detection because it would rotate the centrifuges at a certain rate for, I think, maybe like 2 weeks or something, and then it would just shut off for like around 3 weeks. I forget the exact number, but it's a very sophisticated way of hiding so that it wouldn't get detected. So this showed like the sheer extent of like how far cyber warfare could go, because this was a very scary worm at the time, and then it basically destroyed a lot of their centrifuges. And how would you protect yourself against this? This is also a difficult problem, but one thing to note is you want to be aware of the programs you have on your computers and the auxiliary devices, such as flash drives that you put into it. Because the way the Stuxnet worm was transmitted was through USB. So like if you have a physical device, it could potentially carry programs or files that have dangerous content, such as the Stuxnet worm or other potential like viruses, for example. So another topic in cybersecurity is called social engineering. So this is basically an attack on human morals. Like the strongest security systems in the world are basically no use if people fall for really simple things. So yeah, the best computer security practices are easily subverted by bad human practices. For example, if you're talking over the phone, like, you should never do this. Like, give out like a password or like how much like your credit card balance is, even like to family, because you could get your messages like tracked or things like that. Also, like, yeah, don't respond to like spam emails with like requesting for personal information. So it seems sort of obvious, but there are ways of wording it such that people fall for it. Yeah, so one of these types of attacks is called phishing. So this is when an attacker sends you a plausible email requesting you to visit a site and provide some information. So they typically try to pose as like your bank or a popular social media website. But the key distinction is the attacker actually controls the website and gets your personal information based on what you submit. So the best way to protect yourself against this kind of situation is you always want to verify the authenticity of the email sender before doing anything. So you really want to make sure like it's not actually like a fake email, because there are some cases, like for example, if Gmail, someone claiming to be Gmail says you've exceeded your limit, like that seems plausible, but they'll always they won't ask you to send like credit card information or anything like that. That's when you know it's a little suspicious. So that's something to keep in mind. Another topic is buffer overflows. This is more out of the user's control, but it's a common issue when a program overruns its boundary and overwrites important information. So this is extremely common for like the operating system on like your laptops or your phones. So basically what happens here is each program has like a certain amount of memory allocated to it, and if it's expecting some input from the user, if you send more information than it expects, you could potentially overwrite what's called like a return address, and then gain control of the system basically. So this is a little bit harder because most people don't implement the actual OS themselves. But to protect yourself, you want to check the boundaries of your buffers to make sure it doesn't go out of bounds. So this is just like a good practice in general. But it's unless you actually write your operating system code, it's probably less common. So yes, viruses. So what exactly are these? Sorry, misspelled. They're basically self-replicated programs that copy themselves and infect other programs. So, and then they use the privileges of their users to infect other programs, because usually users will have like full privileges to everything they do on their computer, for example. So if they gain root control over a file, then they could probably just copy themselves into other files and therefore cause more damage. So how do you protect yourself in this situation? There's known antivirus software such as Norton Antivirus that checks your entire system for malicious programs like this. And another thing you can look for is if you notice like a change in your file size, because what viruses do is they have a lot of self-replicating code. This basically makes their files bigger. So then if you notice like one of your files is a lot bigger than it used to be, then that's suspicious behavior that could be traced to a virus potentially. And then you can also do what's called scanning for virus signatures. So if you know your antivirus software probably has a known database, then that's basically what they do. Like they check for known virus signatures and compare against that. Okay, yeah. So these are some more precautions to avoid viruses. You don't want to download or import untrusted programs. So if you go to a highly suspicious website, then you have to really be careful, because a lot of things like sort of hide in the download attachments that you have. So then you have to be careful about that. You want to limit the targets that viruses can reach. So then a way to do this is you could modify the permissions of your files. In Mac, you could do it directly through the terminal. It's called the chmod command, and you could just change the permissions for like read, writing, and executing. I'm not sure how to do it in Windows though, but there should be a way online. And you also want to monitor updates to executable files carefully. So then, whenever you're updating some of the programs you run, you want to just be aware of like any changes in file size or things like that that could be potentially suspicious. So some more tips for avoiding viruses. If you suspect a program does have a virus, you could run it in a encapsulated environment. So this is basically just like a sandbox environment where you test certain features. So if you have like a virtual machine, you could probably import a file and just see if the virus tries to spread itself. Like you don't ideally want it on your actual machine, but if you do suspect you have a virus, this is probably the best way of confirming your doubts. As mentioned earlier, you could create a database of known virus signatures and check each file for any matches, because this is basically the part where you check virus signatures, because then you'll know for sure it's a virus. And then another thing you could do is disable some program features that run executables without users asking, because in general, you always want to be able to have control over what you run. So if it just runs automatically, that could be potentially dangerous. So you always want to make sure you have control over programs you run. So even after following all these steps, what if you actually do get infected by a virus? The best way to recover from this situation is probably to reboot from a clean, write-protected medium. Basically what write-protected means is that you're not allowed to edit the files on your system. So that's write permissions. But you want to verify that the medium is actually safe. So then, like, if it claims to be safe but it's actually has like malicious stuff, then obviously that's not good. So you want to make sure it's 100% safe first, and then reboot from that. And then if you do have backups, then use your backups basically. So that's why it's always important to have backups of your file on like an external hard drive. So in case like a situation like this happens, you can just recover from the state. for Mac, I think there's this thing called Time Machine that you could always backtrack to. For Windows, there's probably something similar. But then, yeah, backups are just good practice in general. So then another potential malicious program is called a Trojan Horse. So what a Trojan Horse does is it's a seemingly useful program that does malicious things. So Trojan horses come from a wide variety of external apps, such as games, apps you download from the internet, email attachments, and even like auxiliary hardware, such as like USBs. So how do you protect yourself from this? So it's similar to what you would see against viruses. You would use some strong security software. One of the ones I used in the past was called Malware Bytes, and that's been very effective from my personal experience. And just being cautious about opening like whatever attachments you have, because since Trojan horses usually come with other files, you just want to be careful about what you're opening. So another topic is called a trapdoor. So for these, it's a little bit more out of the user control. It's basically what the actual programmer implements. So it's a secret entry point into an otherwise legitimate program, and malware can use these trapdoors to gain access. So I guess like one of the hypothetical recent examples was like for the 2015 San Bernardino terrorist attack. They were contemplating creating a trapdoor in iOS to try to see what was going on in the phone, but Apple didn't want to do that because it would undermine like a lot of the security protections. So that's sort of like a case study of why trapdoors are bad in general. So in general, it's bad practice to have programs installed that do have trapdoors. But this is a little bit difficult because it's at the discretion of the person who writes the operating system or whatever program it is. So I guess the best recommendation I have is if you know a program has known security issues with trapdoors, don't download it. And if you do download it, perhaps reformat your system if necessary. Like it's pretty hard to deal with this kind of situation. So try to avoid programs like this. Another topic is called a logic bomb. So what this is it's a code that explodes under certain conditions. So it's less common. It's usually created by disgruntled employees for revenge. Some notable cases were like back in 2009, a former TSA employee used a logic bomb and got 2 years in jail because of that. So. And then also, South Korean banks and media companies in March 2013. So basically, it's code that a person could run like whenever they're not happy with the situation, and it'll cause a lot of havoc. For a logic bomb, it's usually less common. It's because it's usually used against like corporations. So like I'm not exactly sure how to protect against this. But then usually the people will get caught, so then I guess just be aware of that. I guess like having backups would help protect against this. So another type of like cyber attack is extortionware and ransomware. So this is when an attacker breaks in and does something to a system and asks for like something in return. So encrypting vital data is a common attack of this form. So usually hospitals are attacked because like a lot of people's lives are at stake, and if they encrypt like someone's data, then they can't read the medical information, and it's hard to do anything. So yeah, U.S. hospitals are especially vulnerable to this. I'm not sure if Ronald Reagan had a ransomware attack, but I think one of the big hospitals in the U.S. did recently have an attack, so that's something to keep in mind. So to protect against extortionware and ransomware, it's sort of along the same lines as some of the other ones. You want to back up your data because like you want like whenever it's your data gets encrypted, you want to always have like a backup in order to retrieve it, so you don't have to submit to their demands. And some other things I read were showing hidden file extensions and filtering out executable files, because usually for the ransomware, it's usually in an executable program, and you want to disable files running from app data / local app data folders. I think this is where like a lot of the ransomware attacks are stored, but I'm not too sure about this specific detail. So another thing to keep in mind are worms. These are programs that seek to move from system to system. So the first notable worm was created by a Cornell graduate student in 1988, and this is the first worm that attacked like the entire internet. So it quickly infected like hundreds of computers that were linked to the web at the time. And yeah, so there's like a lot of terminology. So like just as a recap, a virus is a piece of self-replicating code that seeks to infect other programs. A Trojan Horse is a program that looks like it's good intentioned, but it's actually malicious. And worms are just programs that seek to travel from like computer to computer. To protect yourself from worms, I would recommend rebooting all known infected systems, because you really want to essentially quarantine them and prevent it from spreading further. Yeah, basically that. So some other things are, there's another thing called a botnet. So this is a collection of compromised machines that do various attacks. So they could be used for spam, DDoS. So this used like the Mirai. I believe it was I forgot. I think it's a worm. So this is partially what caused the DIN cyber attacks in 2016. And then they could also be used to host phishing sites. And they usually run what's called a toolkit to control like a central machine, and then it'll spread out to other machines, part of that interconnected system. So how do you protect yourself against a botnet? You want to clean up the nodes, like the computers that you know are infected, and you want to try to interfere with like how the botnet operates, because there's usually a specific chain of commands that they run, and if you could interfere with that, then you could break down the botnet itself, and you could potentially just ignore the bot nodes. Basically, like any of the packets coming in, you could set up your firewall to avoid like this kind of situation. But there is some difficulties for this particular case, because sometimes the botnet actually does some legitimate things. Like it doesn't do completely malicious behavior. And it's also easier said than done because of that situation, because they could potentially do good things as well as bad things. Because it's usually like a botnet usually encompasses computers that were originally used for a good purpose, but they could get infected and therefore do bad purposes as well. So spyware. This is software installed on a computer meant to gather information. It's usually sensitive data, such as like passwords and credit cards, as well as like monitoring your browsing activity. So yeah, this has a lot of implications that are very dangerous, because they could see like what exactly you're doing at whatever time. So to protect yourself from spyware, it's highly recommended you read any fine print before clicking anything, because they usually are marketed as sort of like known programs. So then just be aware of whatever programs you're downloading that could potentially be spyware. So usually just look them up. And then there's a good program that I've heard about called Spyware Search and Destroy. So other antivirus softwares do work as well, but I've heard this one in particular is pretty notable. This is more of a general topic of web security. So since many users interact with many servers without a central authority on the internet, you have to really be careful, because there's no one really monitoring like web traffic. So then you have to protect both your data. In general, there has to be protections for both your data as well as like the server data that you send information to. So the two most common attacks include SQL injections and Crosssite Scripting attacks. So what is a SQL injection? some background on this. Many web servers use SQL databases such as MySQL or Oracle. So pretty much anything on the web uses some subcategory of SQL databases. So what malicious attackers do is they send a SQL fragment that generates like a faulty query. So you could say something like 1 is equal to 1, which is always true. So if you're trying to query for someone's like password and you just do 1 equals 1, if it's not if they don't, what's that word, sanitize their inputs, then that could potentially go through and give you access to all the passwords, which is very bad. So a recent attack was just last year, like before before the main elections happened. In 2016, the Florida election site was compromised by a SQL injection. So this shows like this is a very common attack, and you have to really be careful about this if you're writing any database code. So how would you protect yourself in this situation? You want to validate all your input to make sure you can't do anything that always returns true, like 1 is equal to 1. That's the most common example. If you can, try to avoid making queries in websites unless you really know how to protect against attacks like these. And you could use what's called parameterized variables. So they have like certain conditions that they check in order to prevent something like this from happening. And then another topic is cross-site scripting. So many sites allow users to upload information. Like Facebook, you could do what's called a post request to upload statuses, photos, videos, etc. So what happens here is a malicious user can send a script that the user inadvertently downloads and uses. And actually a big issue was found in 2016 regarding WordPress. So as you guys may know, our Circle K website uses WordPress. So this was actually a pretty big vulnerability that Rich told me about back in June. So then we had to patch up WordPress in order to resolve this issue, because there was a pretty big bug regarding this. So how do you protect yourself from a cross-site scripting attack? You usually don't want to allow, like if you're the admin of a page, you don't want to allow anyone to upload anything. So I guess, for example, if you guys may have noticed, for our website, people aren't allowed to create accounts, and the reason for this is because I've gotten requests for that seem like malicious and stuff. And then basically if you have an account, you could basically look at a lot of people's information. So I didn't want to risk that in any way. And we don't have like a fully involved security team, so that's why members don't create their own accounts. Like we create the accounts for them. And don't allow the uploading of any scripts. So like when you're running like a script to do something like on the web, like that could be potentially dangerous. So you just want to cut that out entirely. So that was a lot of content that we discussed. So just like a too long didn't read thing. Cybersecurity is a huge issue in multiple areas, such as politics, such as the election attacks, businesses which are highly vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks, and your personal life, because so much of what you say and do is like on the internet. You just want to be really careful about a lot of things. And it's just like a matter of being aware of what's going on with your electronic devices, and what's going on in the internet is the key to staying safe. So some key points to stay safe against malware. You want to use a good anti-malware software such as Malwarebytes. Yeah, that one's very good. Regularly use antivirus software such as Norton to scan your computer. And avoid downloading files from untrusted websites or anything that seems suspicious. So when in doubt, don't download the program. So how would you stay safe over the internet? You want to use two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and avoid storing sensitive data. And you also want to be constantly aware of like who you're sharing your content to. If you release into like a public domain, there could be some people who have bad intentions who will try to use whatever you post against you. So just be aware of your audience. And avoid untrusted sites that have known vulnerabilities. So like a lot of browsers have built-in features that detect if a website is suspicious. Like Google Chrome has that for sure. Yeah, if it recommends not to use that site, then don't use it. And some next steps if you're more interested in learning more about cybersecurity in general. There's a computer science class taught by Professor Peter Ryer. If you just like want to like sit in or just like attend a few of his lectures, he's pretty good. I had him last year, and yeah, he's a very good lecturer. And then next year, there's this thing called a USIE seminar taught by a good friend of mine, called Safety in the Cloud. So it's like just like a generic introduction to cybersecurity. So it's like a 1-unit pass no pass seminar, and it's open to anyone. So if you guys are interested, just go to this link, and yeah, you'll find out more. Yeah. So that was the workshop. Alright, so moving on to website of the week. This is just like sort of a general cybersecurity news thing. If you want to learn more about current topics in cybersecurity, like current attacks, I think this one was pretty good. Like, it's pretty comprehensive about like a wide variety of topics, like just like the internet, mobile technology, and just security in general. This is a good site if you want to learn the latest about security trends.
Okay, so design of the week this week is Boston. They recently got like a rebranding, just top down. So this is the website, but there's like more to it. And I was just like, this is very slick for like a civic website generally. But it's cool how like they looked at like maybe what people use on the website most often. They put that information up and center. Because like when you think of government websites, usually you think it's kind of cluttered and hard to navigate. But this is very like straightforward. It's like task based. Like, oh, I want a birth certificate. Or, oh, like I need to pay party. Everything's very upfront, and it's also just very like modern, designed in a modern way. This is cool. I mean, they have more to it as well. So like they updated their seal, so it's like it retains that kind of classic look, but also is like easier to print and like display online. Created a bunch of icons, hats, and stuff. So that's pretty cool. It's just that like cities can they don't have to be boring. They can definitely have their own identity. Yeah.
Do you have any open forum items? No. Alright. I guess so moving on to action items, yeah, A-board applications. So I guess some general tips that like I guess I have is no matter what position you apply to, try to ask like your predecessors for advice because they've been there before. They know what it's like for the experience of both applying, interviewing, and then like actually performing the duties of the position. So then, yeah, no matter what position you're interested in applying for, I highly recommend like contacting them and asking what they recommend in order to prepare for things like that. And for the actual interview, you want to think of like hypothetical example situations where you have to deal with internal like crises. So like as Catherine can attest to, like they ask a lot of questions like how would you handle like if you're on board and you have to deal with like some sort of adversity or things like that. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you guys want like a preview of the technology chair prompts, it's going to be describe 2 ways you could improve the website that would improve both functionality and traffic, and explain how these changes would benefit the club and the members. In addition, how will you work with the secretary to efficiently update membership information such as service hours, MRP requirements, and standing? So then, I guess what I've done, I guess what I need to do more of, like I need to ask Calvin like for updates, but I've contacted Calvin quite often to like make sure that everything's up to date. Like whenever he sends me information, then I'll try to get up as soon as possible, and just like adding like additional features like to the website, like updating like Hall of Fame, Member of the Week, things like that, incorporating the forum, one of the things I really wish I did more was like trying to get more user involvement out there, because I felt that was the area I was weakest in. So then that's sort of something to keep in mind, I guess.
Yeah. For like graphic design tips, I guess just being on by if you have a portfolio, I think which one previously that you can show. So on the job itself, at the beginning of the year when everybody's choosing the theme, you do have like a pretty debate and trying to convince people why you like the theme you like should be chosen, because you'll be working with that theme throughout the year. Additionally, it's like communication with all the other board members, because you're basically going to be taking a lot of requests. So I think Trello this year will help with that. Everything's in one place. Yeah, and just like in the interview, just be dynamic, be ready to like answer questions about hypothetical examples.
Yeah.
As for upcoming graphics, we have more DMs coming up. So I feel bad because like the family takeover is happening like week 9, right? Yeah. So that's happening week 9. Plaid got changed to Pixar, so I don't know if Plaid is still.
We're probably gonna leave it. Yeah.
So sorry for Sheila because she made the banner, but now we're gonna use it. And right, so upcoming we have which one's the alumni takeover?
Isn't it like 9? It's
That's
either
family takeover, right?
then maybe
Alumni
8.
is week 8, I think, right?
I think so.
Okay. So we have like an alumni takeover. Next week is Pixar, which we just used placeholder image for. That next week is it's week 6. Okay.
Yeah.
So week 7 is going to be I'm not actually sure. This isn't updated. So Carnival, are we still doing Carnival? So that week 9. So this is Pixar. Week 9 is Takeover. Week 8 is Alumni. And week 7 is...
It's whichever hasn't been used.
So Plaid. Are we still doing Plaid?
Could potentially be Plaid.
Or Carnival. Okay. Well, since we're not actually sure,
I'll check later.
I'll look at that later. And then also we have a request from Diane to make an Assassin's Facebook banner. This has to come out relatively quickly because I think we're starting Assassins tomorrow, Friday. Yeah. Not tomorrow night, right? I was doing after
Friday midnight is when
So if anybody wants to work on that, it's like really quick. But like the Facebook event's gonna be up for 3 weeks. So if no one's interested, I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I can I'll add you to the telephone. And I'll ask her if she wants like anything. Because last year I remember it was like what was it the previous year? It was like a ninja type of thing there. Ask her. Cool. And that is it. So I think it's okay.
Does anyone have any randoms?
So first day, I'm going. When me and my friends, we decided to try to be vegan for 2 weeks. And so
for fun
for fun. Or not fun. Yeah, pretty much like just to see how it is.
It's so
not
hard.
really- I wouldn't say it's fun. I think just to like
How fun.
for the experience. Yeah.
That's so hard.
So what have you been eating
I got a vegan wrap from Decaf for lunch. I'm trying to plate. Yeah. Apparently, we're on Monday has a big basically.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. It's actually kind of depressing. Like being a vegan on a hill is really hard.
Yeah.
And this is UCLA. Like imagine being
Yeah.
vegan in middle school.
Oh man, that's gonna be
Like
rough.
that'd be so rough.
Just a lot of veggies.
Yeah.
Grains.
I guess for me, so the person who was originally supposed to go with me to James Corden bailed, so I need another person. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I was so sad. I really love James Corden. Like it's great, but hopefully someone could fill the spot. But yeah.
Did you guys get free tickets or something? Like did you buy them?
I didn't buy them, so Janice got them from One Iota, and then like she got the really good like seats. Like she won like the lottery system or whatever, but then she couldn't go. So then
You need
Yeah.
someone who looks like her.
yeah, I need someone who looks like her, and yeah. So hopefully that works. If not, yeah, it's gonna be sad. Do you have any other randoms?
It's kind of hard today.
Oh yeah, you mentioned yeah. It's always scary.
Question, Mike, are you still doing the yearbook website?
Yeah.
Are you doing that on like WordPress or?
I want to do it on WordPress. Yeah. But if it's just like a static page, it's a lot of photos.
Yeah.
So that'd be a lot of work. Versus WordPress, like this one is like I can make a gallery.
Yeah. Yeah, WordPress like this has built-in stuff that makes it fairly easy to upload just a bunch of photos. So
It'd be a cool thing to do and like I can see I think it'll be
what
we'll actually yeah, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Just go like Slack.
you could just add it to the actual site itself. And then if not, you could always do, since it's static, right? You could do GitHub pages probably, but then like just adding a bunch of photos.
Yeah.
Alright. Does anyone have any workshops they want to see for next meeting in particular? Any ideas?
We're doing a drawing one.
Oh, the fall.
Physically.
Oh, right.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've actually like drawn anything. But
We already did the Photoshop one.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we could just put up a poll and like whatever you guys are interested, just vote for it and then we'll pick whatever you guys want. So, alright. So I guess we'll adjourn this meeting at 8:46 p.m. Thank you guys for coming up.
Thank you.